Donald Trump just signed a trade agreement with the European Union that is so enormous, that is so beneficial to America, that even CNN and MSNBC are finding it impossible to spin in a negative way and are actually forced to admit that this is a massive victory for America and for Donald Trump. This trade deal comes only a week after Trump signed a massive $700 billion trade agreement with Japan, and before that, the UK and Australia. It seems Donald Trump's maximum leverage campaign is working, as trade deals are getting done, tariff revenue is through the roof, and inflation hasn't gone up as a result of any of it. Looks like those Democrat experts were wrong again. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel, but you guys know I love to start off the videos with a banger. Here is Bill Maher admitting he was completely wrong about Donald Trump's tariff policy, admitting the economy hasn't crashed, and oh, Donald Trump might know what he's actually talking about. Watch.
I remember along with probably most people, were saying at the beginning, oh, you know, by the 4th of July, somebody had a thing how the country was, the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me, but that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty. Because the truth is, I don't know what his strategy is. But look, the stock market is at record highs. I know not everybody lives by the stock market, but I also drive around. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that that these tariffs were going to fucking sink this economy by this time, and they didn't. So, you know, how do we deal with that fact? Because that's the fact.
Now, the person he was talking to on that podcast is left-wing political commentator Brian Tyler Cohen. I've seen a lot of you guys in the comments tell me that I should try to debate him, but my response would be, why? What's the point? We won in November, and we've been winning ever since. The border's closed, the men are out of women's sports, inflation is down, jobs are up, manufacturing is coming back, trillions of dollars in investment. All these new trade agreements are erasing our trade deficits. Military recruitment is up, Democrat approval rating at an all-time low. I mean, there's just not much to argue with Democrats about at this point. I'm just sitting back enjoying the ride and having a blast making these videos for you guys. But Bill Maher is exposing a fatal flaw in the Democrat Party. Democrats are so entrenched in their anti-Trump ideology that it's impossible for them to admit that he's doing anything right. And so while most Americans are seeing the things he's doing as positive, people are looking at the Democrat Party and they're taking the opposite position of things that 80% of Americans find objectively positive. It makes them look untrustworthy, that they can't be relied on to put their personal grievances against Donald Trump to the side for the well-being of their constituents. Now, here's the news from the big man himself, President Donald Trump, announcing this historic trade deal with Europe. And after that, we'll get into all the clips of the liberal media showering Trump with praise.
European Union is going to agree to purchase from the United States $750 billion worth of energy. $750 billion worth of energy. They are going to agree to invest into the United States $600 billion more than they're investing already. So they're investing a large amount of money. You know what that amount of money is. It's very substantial, but they're going to invest an additional $600 billion. They're agreeing to open up their countries to trade at zero tariff. So that's a very big factor. Opening up their countries, all of the countries will be opened up to trade with the United States at zero tariff. And they're agreeing to purchase a vast amount of military equipment.
Now, one key aspect of this deal that wasn't touched on in that clip, because he said it like a minute later and I wanted to keep the clip concise, is that the European Union will be paying a flat 15% tariff on all exports to the United States. And that part's big. That's what gives this deal a lot of weight. And of course, crying anti-Trump liberals on X have been screaming, oh, how is this a win for America? All it means is everything we get from Europe is now going to be 15% more. And they're right, but that's the point. That means that Americans will now buy less things from Europe and instead buy those things domestically, while our countries get to export their goods to the entire European market with a 0% tariff. That's why this is such a massive win for the United States and why Europeans are freaking out that they got the short end of the stick. American companies can now compete in the European market with no tariff, making their product or service more expensive. While now every European business wanting to send their products into America just became a whole lot less attractive. And just to really break down the point, and I hate to bore you guys with math, only 15% of consumption in the United States comes from imports. And let's say half of those imports come from the European Union. I think it's even less than that. But for example's sake, it's half. A 15% tariff on 7.5% of all goods would lead to roughly a $1 increase per $100 spent. So the average American won't even feel a 1% price increase. So that increase is nominal. No American will actually feel that. But what it does do is fill the coffers of the US Treasury with all that juicy tariff revenue. So for all the Trump deranged liberals on X that can't afford to pay back their student loans but also somehow think they're masters at economic policy, tell that to all the Europeans who are pissed off about this deal. But now let's get into the liberal media having no choice but to praise Donald Trump for this trade agreement. Here is CNN calling it a massive victory.
Is this a fantastic deal then struck by Donald Trump and just terrible negotiation on the part of the EU? I mean, how do you...
I think that's an accurate assessment. To me, this is a humiliating capitulation on behalf of the EU, and it really calls into question this amazing negotiating strength, this leverage that the EU is supposed to exert as a superpower on world affairs. It really makes you wonder, what is it actually doing for its member states if the UK can on its own get a better deal than this giant economy? So I think it's a real failure on the part of the European Commission in negotiating here. And obviously, it's better than not having any deal at all at 30% or something. But this is really a wasted opportunity, I think, for the EU, and absolutely a victory on behalf of the Trump administration.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is why they call him Donald Art of the Deal Trump. I saw this hilarious tweet from a liberal who was absolutely shocked that Trump put together such an amazing trade deal. He said, at some point, we have to admit that Donald Trump and his cabinet full of 5 University of Alabama undergrads are running circles around 10,000 PhDs. And that's absolutely the truth. When you're the world's military superpower, when you're the world's economic superpower, you have all the leverage. Our insane trade imbalances and the offshoring of our entire domestic manufacturing capability were intentional policies by politicians meant to uplift and enrich the rest of the world at the expense of the American citizen. It was almost like, you guys are too rich and prosperous. Come on, suffer a little bit so we can do better. But now Donald Trump is putting America first, being a man, standing up for his country, and using the leverage at his disposal. The United States has less than 5% of the world's population, but accounts for 1 in every $3 spent across the globe. We have so much purchasing power, it's not even funny. I read a shocking report when I was doing some research on just how robust our government welfare program is. Our poorest 20% in the United States, when you account for food stamps, subsidized housing, subsidized education, subsidized healthcare, live a better quality of life than the average European, and that is a fact. That's how rich and prosperous America is. But here is MSNBC also conceding that this was a massive victory for Trump and a great deal for America.
The Europeans did not want to have an escalating tariff war. People wanted predictability, but also for the Europeans, as important as the trade dimension is of the relationship, there's other dimensions beginning with the security and obviously with the war against Russia in Ukraine. So it was very much in the European interest to somehow, some way, find a way to resolve the trade frictions. I expect there'll be some in Europe who'll say perhaps they ought to have pushed back harder, they gave up too much. But I think this was something of a bargain or a decision from their point of view to reflect their greater priorities.
I think what a lot of liberals were missing, because they're just far too sensitive, is Donald Trump never had any animosity towards our allies. He was not being adversarial. In fact, he, like myself, and I think most people, liked the idea of NATO in theory, of prosperous trade relations with all of the Western democratic societies. What he and me and everybody else didn't like was the practicality of it all. We were being screwed by NATO. We were being screwed in our trade agreements with our supposed allies. And now, only 7 months into Trump's administration, he has revitalized NATO. He has got our allies to commit to 5% spending from 2%. He has successfully renegotiated favorable trade deals with both the UK and the European Union. It wasn't that we didn't like our allies. We just didn't like being screwed. Donald Trump heard the plights of the people. They are not doing well. People are nostalgic about a time in America where good jobs were prevalent, where people were confident their children would live a better life than they did. And they saw a series of administrations that ignored the prosperity of the American people and instead focused on a globalist agenda that directly hurt the American people. And if any liberals still watching at this point don't believe that this was a massive victory for America, here's the head of the European Union explaining just how tough these negotiations were for them.
It was very difficult because we started far apart from each other. It was tough, fair, but it was tough. And therefore, rightly so, you saw the tension at the beginning. So we had to work hard to come to a common position, and till the very end, as always in negotiations, you don't know whether you'll find the landing point, the landing zone at the very end, or whether it crashes. So it was tough, but in the end, as we were successful, it's good and it's satisfactory.
She saw that August 1st deadline approaching and knew that the 30% tariffs America was going to put on the European Union were going to absolutely cripple them, thus putting them into an even weaker negotiation position. And it's not even like this is going to be a bad deal for Europe. It's just that America has received the short end of the stick for so long that any deal that's even net neutral or slightly more beneficial for America is so far from the previous status quo that it just feels like such a massive L. Here is a reporter asking the head of the European Union while her and Trump are announcing this deal, did the United States even give up anything, or is it just Europe that's seemingly giving up everything?
What are the U.S. concessions? What is the U.S. giving up in the deal, if anything?
So the starting point was an imbalance, a surplus on our side and a deficit on the U.S. side. And we wanted to rebalance the trade relation. And we wanted to do it in a way that trade goes on between the two of us across the Atlantic, because the two biggest economies should have a good trade flow between us. And I think we hit exactly the point we wanted to find. Rebalance, but enable trade on both sides, which means good jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, means prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic, and that was important for us.
First off, that was hilarious, but I thought it was an incredibly petty question from the reporter. All they were trying to do was instigate the situation, create a tense moment, and hopefully get some sort of headlines that would drive clicks to their failing business. But behind the pettiness, I think there's some validity to what she's asking on behalf of the European people. They have to invest $600 billion into the United States. Their products are all now 15% more into the United States, and now all these companies in the United States get to just enter their market 0% tariffs and compete directly with domestic business. It's like, yeah, sorry, the gravy train of taking advantage of the US economy is over. You're gonna have to find a new way to pay for your socialist utopias. You have to pay your fair share to NATO now. You have to live under the climate of a fair trade agreement. Let's see how long that free healthcare shtick lasts. The last thing I'm gonna show you is another talking head on MSNBC admitting that the United States won and Europeans are pissed about this.
This is better than it could have been. There was a 30% tariff threatened on August the 1st if a deal wasn't reached, but it is worse than what Britain achieved, which was a 10%, not a 15% tariff. So the European disaffection with this whilst many share the relief that Ursula von der Leyen you showed expressing there, they also, from France and Germany in particular, expressed real frustration that there's going to be quite a big hit here to European GDP.
So when Donald Trump traditionally gets a win, a 99% decrease of border crossings, CNN and MSNBC are nowhere to be found commending him. So when you see a rare situation like this, that both platforms are just giving Trump his props for this trade deal, I think we should see that as this trade deal is going to have a huge impact on American prosperity. It's probably bigger and more beneficial than I on the surface think it is. And while the Democrat Party is in the absolute gutter, I mean, they're on the brink of extinction, Donald Trump is delivering for the American people. Like Bill Maher said in the first clip in this video, people are just out enjoying life. They don't see a crumbling democracy. They don't look left and right and feel like they're in Nazi Germany. But the continued rhetoric from the Democrats is don't believe your own eyes, believe us when we tell you that you actually are. It's this lectury pretentiousness that they know better than everybody else, and despite what you're feeling, what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, the Democrats know better. And that's why their party has a 19% approval rating, and Donald Trump is out here signing trillion-dollar trade deals. But let me know what you guys think about this massive victory down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on those notification bells so you never miss a video. And I will see you guys in the next one.